Hi, everyone. It's Tessa.
And Joe.
From the Unveiling Paradise podcast.
Tessa, summer is almost here, and so many of our listeners are about to have their epic destination wedding.
And we are so excited for you guys.
Before the big day, guys, we want you to make sure you listen to these 3 episodes.
Episode 62, Deep Diving Your Wedding Ceremony.
Episode 53, Questions Your Wedding Guests Will Ask.
And episode 31, the final countdown to your wedding day.
And if you're planning your wedding here in Hawaii, hit us up and ask us about our Unveiling Paradise podcast promo.
Happy planning.
Hey, what's up, Tessa?
Hey, Joe.
All right, let's get started. I am so excited to chat with you today. We have a lot to talk about.
Can't wait.
All right, I want to start out with this wedding I did in St. Bart's. Did I ever tell you about this?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so St. Bart's, it's a French colony, right? I think it's a French.
Do you speak French?
I do not at all. I mean, maybe a little.
Were they speaking French there?
I don't know. Horrible. But I had the opportunity to shoot this wedding. It was actually a friend of mine from college. And she said, hey, I really want you to shoot this wedding. And I said, okay, I have never been to St. Bart's. I have no idea what this is going to be like. It's actually just one of like the most amazing places. They have just the most amazing clear, like crystal clear blue waters. And it's so foreign. It's like these, like, it's almost like you're in like the south of France. The houses are just so cool. And I mean, it's the language, they're speaking French, and you're in a different country. And to get there, you have to travel a lot. And I think one of the craziest things was actually to get to this wedding, I was super stressed out because of all the travel it took to get there, right? In order to get to St. Bart's, I think I had to fly. It was like a long trip from Hawaii to New Jersey, then change planes in Florida, and then you fly into St. Martin, and then you have to take a boat over to, I mean, it's probably like 30 hours of traveling. And I remember like, what if I'm late? What if one of these flights gets delayed or whatever, you know? And then like, and of course, that's probably one of the biggest stresses is like when you are the destination photographer or whatever, how do you make sure that everything goes according to plan when you're actually the one traveling as well?
So how did you do it? Like, how did you get there right before the wedding? Were you there days in advance?
Yeah, I mean,
I think that would stress me out.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I guess for me, like when the wedding happened, you know, I made sure I had a lot of buffer time. So I definitely wanted to like get to St. Bart's to like actually check out everything, check out the locations, talk to like the hotel people and see like what are the cool spots to shoot at? Is there any rules or anything that I need to know? And also just kind of watching for like the sunset. Is it going to have cool sunset? You know,
right.
You know what I mean?
Did you take your family with you, or was it like, were you like hardcore working?
Yeah, I was hardcore working, but I also brought my wife with me. So you know, I mean, and I think
as your second shooter.
Yeah, and we had no, actually, she wasn't my second shooter, but we had about a week there. So, but I did remember like, what if like the boat between St. Martin and St. Bart's breaks down?
So this is a perfect segue into our topic of the day. For destination weddings, do you hire local professionals or bring in your own vendors? Let's break it down. Welcome to Unveiling Paradise, your go-to destination wedding podcast. I'm Tessa, wedding planner and owner of Fred & Kate Events.
And I'm Joe, wedding and adventure photographer of Joseph Esser Photography. We are based in Hawaii, one of the biggest, most popular locations for destination weddings.
We want to share our real-life experiences with you, give you insight from a professional's perspective, and still make sure you're having fun in the process.
We're huge believers in the fact that planning a destination wedding can be one of the most amazing experiences, and we want to bring you along.
We're so excited to talk with you about weddings, Hawaii, and everything else under the sun.
So pack your bags and let's get started. All right, so let's break this down today in our podcast. Hiring a local professional versus flying in your own vendor. So what are some of the things that we want to take into account? Like what are the pitfalls of doing this? What are some of the obstacles? Some of the things that you might benefit from hiring local versus flying in your own vendors.
Right. I think there's two sides to this, right? I think there will be benefits for both. I have a feeling that you and I may not be on the same page for all of this, right?
100%. Because I love destination weddings. I love traveling. I love, but I think for you, you probably get, totally stressed out by the whole thing, right?
Right. I think, as a wedding planner, trying to be somewhere outside of my hometown gives me anxiety a little. I feel like and we'll talk about this later, I think, but part of my skill is my network, right? And my network is very strong on Oahu. Anywhere outside of that, like, I don't know.
And you know where to find the most like random things. So if somebody wants to like, I don't know, have like a giant lit up marquee that says their name or whatever.
Yeah. Easy.
But in another country, you might be like Googling it and
and it's not even in the same language. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Right.
It's a different situation, right? Yeah. That I think as wedding planners, we like to have control over the situation. And going somewhere totally different. And I'm not speaking on behalf of all wedding planners, but for me, like, it would just stress me out.
Yeah. And I think that we'll get into this, but there's different hybrid things you can do as well, right? So for me, I guess I'd want to start with, I think one of the most important things, and this can transcend hiring local or hiring, somebody you fly in, is your personality, right? And so the first and most important thing that we want to do when we're hiring any of our vendors is make sure that we are hiring somebody whose personality is in line with ours, right? The last thing you want to do is hire the weirdo wedding photographer who's going to creep you out. Or maybe
the term that I use is uji.
You're uji. Okay, so
you don't want an uji photographer,
right? But on the same token, right? Maybe if your photographer is speaking a different language and you understand them, or whatever it might be, that might be an obstacle. That might be if you're doing your wedding in St. Bart's and everyone's speaking French and the English is really tough. I think the comfortability, right, would be something that you would take into account. But I think personality, first and foremost. Do you get along with that vendor? Is that person somebody that you can trust to actually do that? And I think pre-COVID, it was a lot harder, right? So we didn't have the ability to like communicate the same way we did, I
think I always say one of the best things that came out of COVID, and I feel like a lot of people will disagree, is Zoom. And I know a lot of people are so over Zoom, but I love the fact that, for me, I have a lot of destination couples and I can see them and meet them and we get to know each other. So by the time they're here for their wedding, I feel like I know them very intimately. I know their personality. I know which photographers will match up with them, which ones are uji and they're not going to like them. And I think that's really important. And I think pre-Zoom, pre-FaceTime, we didn't have that, right? And so it was a lot harder to hire destination, vendors. But now, for me, there's no reason not to. I'm a big fan of hiring local in the destination.
Right. Local in the destination.
Yes. Local in the destination that you're going to.
Yeah. And actually, it's funny. I think that I maybe disagree a little bit with you because I think personality is so important. So a lot of the destination weddings that I've shot where I'm leaving my country, going to another country, actually happens because I've had some sort of former relationship with them, right? So a lot of times I might have shot their engagement pictures and they said, I just want to make sure that I'm cool with my photos, that I'm getting what I want. I trust you. I know you. I have that relationship where you don't necessarily have that with somebody other than on Zoom.
Right,
so, when you have the ability to work with somebody beforehand, right, you do have that extra layer of confidence.
I guess with photography, I get what you're saying. There is that level, but I also think depending on what you're looking for at your destination wedding, like, how important is photography? If you're only having them for a couple of hours, you're there for the experience, not for like all day photos, then maybe it's not as important, right? Then again, hiring local might make more sense because I feel like they could have nice personalities too, not just you.
No. But I think the point is you want to find somebody that you fit with because you're not going to want that Uji photographer all day long.
No.
And there are ways. So what we're saying is there's ways to build those relationships.
Right.
Get to know a couple's style, and you don't have to necessarily be there in person.
Right. No, definitely agree. Talking about local professionals, I think one big point that I always believe, and this is what I say about myself, is you have experience with your destination. So just as, when I fly to Denver, I have very little experience. In Hawaii, it's very different. I'm very comfortable. I've been here. I've grown up here, born and raised my whole life. So I'm very familiar with the venues, the different vendors, the rules, sunset, so I think it's just the experience, right? We understand that the weather patterns are different, the traffic. I don't know. I just feel like this is like I know everything about Oahu.
Right.
Not
right,
to show off, but I
right.
do.
But you're a pro
I
in
am.
your home turf, right?
Yes.
You know every in and
Yes.
out.
Exactly. So I guess, if you're flying in, for example, a wedding planner, I'm not sure if they would have the same level of experience that I would here. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's actually kind of funny you say that because I've known some amazing photographers. You see they have millions of followers on Instagram, whatever, and they come from out of state to Hawaii. And if you look at their portfolio on their Instagram, amazing pictures, but then you see their work here and they just don't get it. They don't get the difference between a Hawaii sunset and an LA sunset. And so like, it's actually kind of sad because like you expect them to be doing these amazing things because they're so talented in LA or wherever they're at.
And
LA,
the sunset's totally different.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
it's so different.
Yeah. And actually when you shoot in LA, I've shot a little bit there. There's so much pollution in the air.
Yeah.
You get these sunsets that are hours long. And sometimes here we'll have a 5-minute, like call it the golden hour, where it's that nice, soft, gentle lighting and everything's beautiful and lit up. And you have to know that. You have to have experience with that. You have to know, okay, what if it's one of those types of sunset?
And I think that's again, for me, that's the point of, hiring someone locally. I don't know, right?
Right. And we also know all those like hidden gems, like those spots that maybe if you weren't from here, you wouldn't necessarily know, like, oh, this hotel's got this cute little spot where I can sneak the couple in for their first look or whatever it might be. You wouldn't know, like, some of those sort of insider things. Could you find out about them? Could you, do your research? Sure, you can. I think that, and I guess where I would sort of slightly disagree with you would be, I think that if you do your homework, if you fly in advance, maybe meet with the venue planner or the coordinator, or, do some sort of site walk and watch the weather and watch those patterns, you can figure it out too.
So when you're saying that though, you're talking about as a photographer.
Well, as a
photographer, in, or what about like a florist or like a cake person?
For sure. I think everyone has to do their own, due diligence and their own homework in order to be as informed as they can be.
I did a wedding once years ago where they flew in their cake person, but the cake person had to find like a kitchen to bake and find the ingredient. Like, it was crazy. I'm like, hire someone here. The cake was delicious. Don't get me wrong. Like, I tried it. Like, what's this amazing cake? It was good, but I can't imagine the stress of trying to fly people in and have them understand the lay of the land and then do this wedding. I don't know. It feels very stressful to me.
Yeah. And I wonder too, like coordinators, I think coordinators are always flying in, right? Mm-hmm. Photographers, videographers, some of those. Is there a market for destination cake makers?
I don't know. Let's bring out a cake person and ask them. I don't know.
Right.
It would seem very stressful to me. I know, even with flowers, I feel like it'd be really hard, but I do know a lot of florists that fly all over to do design.
Right.
So I think it's just, to your point, it's doing your research, doing your homework, understanding, the spots, and then like, where do they source their flowers? Where do they have a studio to design? And I think if you can get that and if they can make it happen, it's definitely doable.
So you actually have a story of a wedding that you did where in Colorado?
Yeah.
And what happened? So tell us, like, what was your experience? So you had a wedding in Colorado.
Yeah. So I did a wedding in Colorado and it was so stressful. So the wedding was in May and it snowed a few days before the wedding.
That's unusual to be snowing in Colorado in May.
Maybe. With that said, I think it snowed June this year. So I think the thing about Colorado is the weather is very unpredictable. She was getting married at a botanical garden. It was outdoors. And because of the snow, it killed all of the flowers. So it was just mounds of dirt.
That's not pretty.
It wasn't pretty at all. And so the venue called me and they said, hey, we have to change the venue. Can you come take a look? And I was like, okay, let me fly up there earlier than planned. No problem. We looked at other sites and we had to pick a different venue because it was literally a huge mound of dirt. In addition to that, her hair and makeup person was in Mexico and I guess went on standby and then couldn't get home and decided that it wasn't worth the cost of buying a ticket to do this hair and makeup. So I had to find a new hair and makeup person for her 2 days before the wedding. And again, like without my resources, without anything like that, I had to call her. I had to tap whatever I did have.
How would it have been different if you were actually a local coordinator and makeup artist? How would that
exactly look? So if I was here in Hawaii and, hair and makeup person canceled, I could easily text 5 or 6 people that I know personally. And I'm like, hey, I have someone. Can anyone help me? I know my resources. I have a network. In Denver, I had to get creative. And so I called her photographer because I met with the photographer earlier, professional, very, very nice. And I said, who do you work with? Right? Because a lot of times professional photographers and hair and makeup people have relationships, right? They are always together. They know who they like. They know what looks good on camera. So she sent me some recommendations and I just started calling all of them.
Oh my gosh. Right.
It was crazy. It was so stressful. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we also need to talk about the rules, right? Local professionals are going to know the rules.
There's a lot of rules to know.
There are a lot of rules. I mean, and so, like some venues, you can fly a drone. Some you can't. Some beaches, you need to have a permit. If you're going to do pictures on the beach or in the mountains, you need to have a permit.
Some states, you can't have sparklers or fireworks.
Right.
Some
exactly.
you can.
Exactly. I mean, and I guess like the point being, like you don't want if there's that local knowledge from living and breathing weddings in that place, you're going to be benefited by that.
Right. Is there anywhere, I guess, like if I was flying into another country, like where could I find the rules, right? Like, is there anywhere that we could do that? Or is it just kind of you're stuck? Yeah,
actually. And that's a good question. There's 2 ways to answer this. So one, here in Hawaii, we have to permit a lot of the things we do for photography. So if you're doing photos on the beach, you actually have to have a permit. You actually have to have the state and the city insured by your insurance policy. And a lot of people who are coming from outside of the state aren't aware of that. Now, does that mean that you can't figure that out? Of course you can figure it out. And we actually have this, it's like a Facebook group about permitting. And there's always photographers that are flying in for weddings to say, hey, what do I need to know? What do I need to do? How do I do it?
Do you guys give them wrong information
no,
just
we don't.
to mess with them?
No, of course we don't. But, and again, if you are traveling to shoot a wedding somewhere, you want to be able to, follow the rules, and you don't want to be the annoying photographer who's like, in the news. So
as a couple, do you think that, if I was to bring in a photographer with me, fly someone in, would the expectation be that that person would be doing that research, or would it be expected that I would have to do it for them?
I mean, if I'm the professional in the room, I'm going to say, I will be doing that for you.
Right.
Right. The other thing too, is there's a lot of countries that if you're going to fly in for work, you need to fly with a work visa versus just your tour visa, right?
Yeah.
And so what if your photographer flies into, whatever awesome location and they get stuck at the border?
Como.
Like Lake Como or wherever, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And that would be a nightmare situation where you're a photographer, you spend all this money.
I didn't even think about that.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And also, I mean, it's even more nuanced. Sometimes the venues, if you bring in an outside photographer or whatever it might be, coordinator or cake person, whoever it is, there's a service charge for that. And like, if you're working with your budget and you're like, okay, I got everything covered. And then all of a sudden, all of these vendors that you brought in, you have to pay in addition.
Well, I think in addition to a service charge, there are some venues where you cannot bring in outside vendors.
Right.
So I would definitely recommend, if you are getting married or when you get married, find out what their vendor list looks like. And if you have to follow that, are you allowed to bring in your own vendor? So before you pay anybody or put down a deposit, I would definitely confirm with the venue, like, can I bring in my outside vendors? Can I bring in a wedding planner? Can I bring in photographers? I definitely know that there are some venues where you cannot bring in your own wedding planner, and it requires you to use their in-house ones.
But everything is also possible, right? So we see celebrity photographers, celebrity, coordinators that they're on these amazing events all over the planet.
Right.
And they figure out how to do that.
Right.
They figure out what's the proper way to get those permissions and whatnot. So first and foremost, you want to hire a professional who's going to be able to research that and find that out.
Right.
And also, talking to the venues, talking to whoever, the municipal permitting people, whoever that is, to get that information.
So it's basically doing your homework.
Doing your
right?
homework. Yeah.
Because I think, just in thinking about it, even locally, right? If I haven't done a wedding at every single possible venue on this island, right? So whenever new ones arise, I do my homework, right? Do a site visit, talk to the venue, figure out what the rules are, right? And I think that would be the same in any other destination that you go to, right? It's planning ahead, doing your homework, and making sure that you're ready.
Right, 100%.
I think another point that I want to make is hiring local professionals. And I think this kind of relates to what I was thinking about earlier, is for me as a wedding planner, it's the relationships and connections that I have. So for example, if you're getting married on Oahu and you're asking me, hey, I'm looking for a hair and makeup artist, for me, it's understanding or asking the questions like, what's your style? What do you like? Do you like very dramatic? Do you like more natural? And I can give recommendations based on that. So I try to find personal recommendations versus just throwing out, here are the top 5 people.
Yeah, 100%. And also, again, is that experience, right? So if you have a makeup artist that you've photographed their makeup multiple times, you're going to know this is how you get that look. I mean, and there's for me, certain makeup artists that I think their work is amazing and it looks so great in camera. I know that because I've shot their work before. If you've never had that experience, it's just who knows what you get.
Right. And I think coming at it from a wedding standpoint, a wedding planner standpoint, because obviously, Joe, you're coming as a photographer. So you're looking at it, what it looks like. For me, there are some hair and makeup artists that are great, but they're late all the time.
Yes.
So they kill me, So for me as a wedding planner, I'm like, we can't use them because it's going to mess with my timeline. It's going to stress me out. I'm going to stress the bride out because I'm going to be yelling at everybody. So I think it's finding that balance, right? Obviously, the makeup has to look good, but it's also understanding logistically, right? Are they on time? Do they send us the contract when we need them? What is it as a planner and a bride that I need from them? And then obviously on the flip side, then what do you as a photographer need from them?
That's such an important part, is those relationships that you forge in that professional network, right? For years. So these are things that are happening over the course of years. And that's something that you can't take for granted, right?
Right, for sure. And I think that's one thing, like I said, having someone local, you have these networks, you have these connections that you just cannot build by traveling everywhere else. And
actually, that's something I like to do when I'm traveling to a location that I'm not from, is to hire in a second shooter that's from there. That person who has those relationships and knows the cool little spots and knows those insider tips and tricks, have them be part of that. So it's sometimes that pairing of the local and the destination can come together, and it's actually beautiful.
I think one thing, not that I don't disagree with what you're saying, but one more point towards having a local professional is a lot of times, because we have these relationships, we have these connections, we can also get discounts.
Wait, what do you mean?
So, for example, I work with a lot of rental companies. I work with a lot of photographers. Because we have these established relationships, that other planners from all over the world may fly in and they're really cool. But when it comes down to it, budget plays a part. A lot of times the discounts make a difference.
Right.
And I think a lot of the vendors that I work with, they appreciate the fact that they're not doing a hard sell. By the time I've reached out to them, I'm like, this couple is ready to book. Let's do it. And I think that's what they like. And I think having those relationships make my job easier. And I think it makes the days flow really well.
And I think that ties exactly into this last point that we have. Hiring a local professional means you're supporting the local economy.
Right. And I think, in addition to the wedding, there are events before and after, right? In addition to the wedding, you have people that are flying in that are paying for hotels. They're doing lunches. They're going shopping, dining experiences. So it's exponential. The support, the money that's going into the local economy, I think that's amazing.
Right. Absolutely.
There was so much to unpack. I definitely feel like we need a recap. Is that cool?
Yeah. And I also think that there's so many different things to take into account. And I don't think that there's a right answer or wrong answer.
I think there's a right answer.
I know you
mine.
do. I know you do. But let's recap. So why don't you go ahead and start, Tessa? What do we?
Yeah. I think that I'm a big advocate for hiring local in the destination that you're getting married. The first one being they have experience at this location. So if you're hiring someone there, they know the lay of the land. They know everything about it. It just makes sense to hire someone that knows it.
Sure. I can agree with that. I also think that sometimes when you know things inside and out, it just becomes mundane, right? You're like,
No.
oh, okay. No. I mean, like there's some venues that we've shot at 100 times and you're like, all right, well, I know I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to go to this place and I'm going to go to this
But
place.
is that a bad thing? I think that's a great thing.
It's not a bad thing, right? But sometimes when you're new to an environment, you see things with brand new eyes. You are super excited and inspired and, you're feeling all those creative juices. So I think that's not necessarily something that is a negative. I think it can be a positive. You want to find your vendor who has the right personality. We talked about this, right? The Uji photographer, the Uji whatever.
I don't want Uji.
Right.
I don't want
you
Uji.
don't want Uji. And a lot of times, the clients that we actually, work with, that we end up traveling to wherever their wedding is at, it's because we've had a former relationships with them. We've shot their engagement pictures. We've gotten to know them. They've gotten to know us, and they feel comfortable. And that's something that I think is a huge reason why destination vendors travel a lot, is because of that.
But are you saying now, is Joe saying this, that every destination vendor is Uji and we shouldn't hire them?
No, I'm not saying that, and I'm not.
because I feel personally that with Zoom, with online forums now, you can meet them and get to know them before you're there. So you can hire local and have a relationship and build that relationship before you get there.
Right. And that's where there's this huge overlap, right? How do we find that person, that company that we want to spend our entire day with? Especially like photographers, we're there, like when you're getting into your dress and things like that, you do not want someone
I don't want Uji.
You don't want Uji, you don't want awkward, you don't want to feel like, those feelings. And that doesn't mean that you can't create those relationships and kind of understand each other's personality through Zoom or through phone calls or, the different ways that we can communicate.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly my point. I'm right, is what I'm hearing you say. I also feel like hiring local, they know the rules, right? So you know this better than most. In Hawaii, there are a lot of rules about shooting on beaches. And so if we were to fly someone in, how do we know that they will know or follow the rules?
Right. And that's true.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I will say, as the devil's advocate here, apparently, that, we can learn, right? We can learn these rules. So, there's questions that we have for every venue. Are we allowed to fly a drone?
Right.
And is the answer yes or no? If it's no, if it's yes, but you need to get these, documents or insurance things to them, then you can do that. So I think, again, as long as you're working with a professional, these sort of obstacles we can, get around or figure out, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tessa, I'm not trying to agree with you on everything for sure, because we have a difference of opinion, but I do think that we share the fact that a lot of times our businesses work better because of the relationships and the connections that we've had and that we've created over the years. And so I think that this is also something that when you hire local, right, you do walk into years and years of experience. Now, is that something that, if you're flying into a venue, can we make new friends and keep the old in this situation?
No.
I'll start singing the song.
Please don't. For me personally, I am a big believer in relationships, and that's how I run my business. That's how I believe life should be, right? It's relationships. And I'm not saying we can't make new friends. I'm capped off with friends, but but I think it is, right? And I think that's the whole thing is it's these relationships that I have with other vendors. It creates a very seamless experience. I know how people work. I know what the timing that they need. And in addition to that, a lot of times I can get discounts, right?
Yes, you're great at that. You're a pro at that.
I can get discounts for my clients on different vendors, right? So it helps their budget too. So hiring locally, again, referring to myself as a local destination wedding planner, it gives you that relationship, that discount, that, just that relationship with I've said relationship like 50 times. It seems a little aggressive.
Then I get to sing the Make New Friends. Come on. Okay.
So, again, I think the final one really is hiring local supports a local economy. And is there anything better than knowing that your wedding has helped support a local economy?
Yes, there is.
Oh,
my dream to shoot a wedding at Bora Bora. That's more important. Yeah, no, you're correct on that. You're totally right.
Right?
I'm not going to disagree with that.
If you're going to fly to Bora Bora or whatever, wouldn't you want to support a local economy, do you hate locals?
No, and that's a thing too.
What are you saying?
Sometimes we can direct our clients to locations, right? And we can hire. So like we can hire local. When we're the photographer, we can pull in a second shooter. That's
Ooh, I like that.
You know what I mean?
I like that.
And so, you maybe by bringing that wedding to that location, you are helping support it. That's a big stretch. But, I guess, again, to just finally recap, these are a lot of different things that we think are really important to consider. There is no right and wrong answer, even though...
Can you see me rolling my eyes? I know
Yes.
no one else can, but Joe can.
Yes, I can. But, I think it's really important to consider all of these things when you're planning a destination wedding.
And here we are, Joe's favorite part of our podcast.
Yes, my favorite part, where we get to hear from you guys.
Questions, and we get to answer.
Well, this is actually kind of fun because this question comes from one of Tessa's previous clients. All right. And she asked, what are your favorite parts of a wedding?
So anyone who knows me, oh wait, can I answer first?
I guess you already started, so yes.
Well, you asked, so I feel like I get to answer first. And I feel like any person who knows me, any client, anyone who's looked at my website knows it's the wedding cake. I love cake. It doesn't matter the flavor, but it's wedding cake. It's the layers of the cake and the filling and the frosting.
What's your favorite flavor? What's your favorite cake? You got to tell everybody.
Vanilla, just vanilla.
Oh, that's so boring. Oh my God, no.
You're vanilla.
Anyone who likes, I promise you, we're going to do a poll for all of our listeners. I don't think anybody likes vanilla besides you.
No,
it's so boring.
vanilla, and it's
Chocolate.
like, it's messy in your teeth.
Chocolate, you just...
If you're going to do a cake cutting and then you're going to, you as a photographer, do you feel like chocolate is a good idea to cut and eat for your cake cutting?
Oh my gosh.
For
okay.
pictures?
All right. Well, okay. So, all right.
No, vanilla.
Vanilla. Okay.
Buttercream, vanilla.
All right.
That's it.
So boring. Well, okay. Well, then I'm sure you're going to hate on me for this because this is going to sound really cheesy.
Yeah.
But I guess if I was to think about this, I think, this sounds so boring. I like the moments at weddings.
Super boring. What does that even mean?
I know, right? Well, so for me, I'm a photographer, and like it's those things that we're looking for.
But you want them to eat chocolate cake.
Yeah, maybe it's chocolate cake in their faces or something like that. Like as long as it's not like something that's super rehearsed or this cookie cutter experience. Like I'm always looking for these moments, right? When we're taking pictures, is the groom gonna cry, right? And you're like, I don't know, and you're like taking bets, or is he gonna be smiling ear to ear? Or, like there's just these things that happen at weddings that I think are what make weddings magical. That look between the dad and his daughter when they're walking down the aisle and they're like, all right, we're doing this. So maybe it's boring, but like those are the things that I love about weddings. It's like the spontaneous, unscripted things that happen.
This seems boring.
Boring.
It was a generic answer.
Boring like a vanilla cake.
Are we boring?
No, I'm not.
I'm not.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm pointing fingers.
Listeners, we're going to need you to give us feedback. Who is more fun?
No.
Who's more boring?
Who enjoys vanilla?
The moments.
Whatever.
I love the moments.
All right. Well, we will promise to get to more of your fun questions.
We can't wait. We love the questions.
Yes. So keep them coming.
Send them in. Thanks. That's it for this week's episode. Do you have a burning question for us? Send it our way and we'll answer them in upcoming episodes.
And we love hearing from everyone from around the world. Tell us your crazy stories or the things that you're most excited about, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Creepy.
Is it? No, you're the creepy one.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Unveiling Paradise.
If you enjoy our show, please follow us and rate us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would really mean a lot.
And don't forget to also get on our mailing list and follow us on Instagram. Just do it already.
Until next time, this is Tessa.
And this is Joe.
And don't forget, your happily ever after
is just a plane ride away.